Imagine you are walking through uh, a notoriously dangerous forest.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. And your dad hands you a drum. He gives you one very specific instruction, which is play this occasionally so the bandits lurking in the trees think a powerful lord is passing through with an armed escort.
That is actually a pretty clever bluff.
It is. But what is your first instinct? If you're anything like the kid in this 2.5 millennial old Jataka tale, you decide to just bang on that drum so loudly and so constantly that the robbers immediately realize you are faking it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the attack. And you lose absolutely everything.
It's a phenomenal psychological trap, really. We often assume that if a little bit of something is good, an overwhelming amount of it must be better.
Exactly.
That drummer boy lacked any sense of moderation and, well, it cost him dearly.
Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dives. We are digging into a massive stack of source material today, specifically a collection of the ancient Jataka Tales.
Which are just fascinating texts.
They really are.
Yeah.
And looking at these ancient narratives through a purely psychological lens, it just changes everything. We aren't treating them as, solemn, dusty religious texts.
Right, because there's so much more than that.
Our mission is to extract the behavioral psychology, the practical wisdom, and the incredibly bizarre cultural history hidden inside. Because when you strip away the talking animals and the tree fairy...
And there are a lot of tree fairies.
So many.
Yeah.
But when you strip all that away, you are left with a vibrant, sometimes embarrassingly accurate manual for surviving human nature.
The mythical dressing often distracts from the core utility of these narratives. I mean, they were designed to be mirrors. The psychological truths they highlight regarding human frailty, ego, and the mechanics of desire, they're entirely applicable to you today. The ancient mind struggled with the exact same cognitive biases that we do.
Which brings us right back to that drummer boy. The story is the Bhairava Jataka,
Wow.
and there is also the Sakaramana Jataka, which uses the exact same premise, but with a conch blower.
Ah, right, the conch blower.
Yeah, they go to a festival, they make a small fortune, and then they overplay their bluff in the forest because they simply cannot suppress their own enthusiasm. The text really zeroes in on this human inability to know when to stop.
It's the trap of overdoing it.
It's like over-seasoning a dish until it's completely ruined, or overplaying a bluff in poker until everyone just sees your cards.
The texts are deeply invested in our lack of an internal braking system.
Okay.
The ancient thinkers recognized that whether you're driven by the greed of protecting newfound wealth or just like the blind passion of playing an instrument, the result is the same. You completely lose touch with your environment.
And that loss of situational awareness is perfectly captured in the Makajataka.
Oh, the fish story.
The fish story.
Yeah.
So we have this amorous fish swimming down a river. He is completely blinded by passion, just, amorously toying with his wife, caught up in the physical thrill of the moment.
As fish do.
As they do. But she is actually paying attention to the currents. She smells a fisherman's net ahead, and she effortlessly swims around it.
Right, she has situational awareness.
Exactly. But the husband is so entirely consumed by his desire that he swims directly into the meshes of the net. He gets hauled out and is literally left to fry.
Notice the mechanism of the punishment there, though.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not some vague, deferred cosmic karma where he behaves badly and is reincarnated as a lesser being. The consequence is immediate and purely biological.
Oh, wow. Yeah. He just gets eaten.
Right. He lost his focus, so he gets eaten.
Mm.
The ancient texts are drawing a direct line between desire and literal ignorance. When you are consumed by passion, you aren't just making a moral error.
You're actively blinding yourself.
Exactly. You are blinding yourself to the physical reality of the dangers around you. You miss the warning signs.
You literally don't see the net. The text focuses heavily on these immediate physical punishments. And here's where it gets really interesting. It happens to the most disciplined people, too.
Right. It's not just the foolish fish.
Look at the Mudula Kanchadaka. You have a highly advanced ascetic living in the king's gardens. This is a man who has achieved such profound mystic insight that the text claims he can levitate.
So he supposedly mastered his mind entirely.
Exactly. But then, one day, he catches a single accidental glimpse of Queen Gentleheart in her revealing clothes.
And it all falls apart. The ascetic's reaction is what makes this a really profound study of human vulnerability.
Yeah, he loses all his mystic powers in a fraction of a second.
The text uses a brilliant metaphor, actually. It says he becomes like a crow with his wings suddenly clipped.
That is such a vivid image.
He retreats to his hut and starves himself for 7 days, completely paralyzed by a sudden consuming desire for the queen.
It portrays passion not necessarily as a sin to be judged, but as an axe that fells a mighty tree. It just cuts you off at the root of your rationality, no matter how much spiritual armor you think you wear.
Because the higher the tower of discipline you build through sheer suppression, the harder it falls when a fundamental biological drive is triggered.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
The ascetic didn't process his desires, you know. He merely avoided them. The moment the environment presented the stimulus, his artificial discipline just crumbled.
So it makes sense that selfish passion or greed leads to foolish behavior. But let's flip the script for a second. What happens when the underlying drive isn't selfish at all?
You mean?
Yeah. What if it is rooted in love or generosity or a desire to be helpful? The sources show that even the most pure intentions can cause absolute disasters if the person lacks practical wisdom. I call it the sledgehammer approach.
The texts take a rather uncompromising stance on this. Meaning well is completely insufficient.
It is so darkly funny. I was literally wincing while reading the Makasa Jataka and the Rohi Jataka.
You're brutal.
In both stories, you have devoted children trying to help their parents. A mosquito lands on the father's bald head and one tail, and a fly lands on the mother and the other.
And the kids just want to relieve their parents' annoyance.
Right. But the son uses a heavy axe, and the daughter uses a massive pestle. They strike with all their might to kill the bugs, and they end up killing their parents instantly.
It's a shocking narrative device for sure. The violence is abrupt, but it forces the listener to differentiate between intent and action.
I have to pause here, though, because it feels incredibly harsh. I mean, these people were just trying to be helpful. Isn't it a bit much to punish them so severely?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the texts are making a broader point. Take the Vidabha Jataka.
Oh, the treasure rain story.
Yes. A Brahmin knows a magical charm to make treasure rain from the sky. He and his people get captured by robbers.
And the pupil begs him not to use the charm, right?
Yeah.
Warning that it will cause a disaster.
Exactly. The Brahmin ignores him, thinking he can generously appease the robbers and buy their freedom. He recites the charm, the treasure rains down.
But instead of taking the money and leaving, the robbers instantly turn on each other.
It incites a massive turf war. It ends in a bloody slaughter where almost everyone dies, including the well-meaning Brahmin.
Why punish a guy who is just trying to create like a magical economic stimulus package to save his own life?
Because the Brahmin failed to understand human nature. He treated a complex behavioral problem, the greed of violent criminals, with a simplistic magical shortcut.
Ah, I see.
In these philosophies, good intentions are dangerous without right view. Right view is the ability to foresee the realistic consequences of an action.
So the children couldn't foresee the consequence of an axe on a human skull.
Right. And the Brahmin couldn't foresee that showering thieves with infinite wealth would trigger their ultimate paranoia and violence.
So they basically substituted their own stubborn will for actual wisdom. The pupil understood the robber's psychology, but the master only understood the magic trick.
Which is why the master perishes. These stories act as severe warnings against ignoring expert advice and letting your own ego drive the wheel, even if your ego is telling you that you're being helpful.
Okay, so if good intentions aren't enough, and we desperately need this right view or practical wisdom, where does it come from?
That is the big question.
Reading these sources, the most surprising takeaway for me is that wisdom doesn't come from the stars or magic or omens. It comes from a cold, rational intellect.
You really have to consider the era here. The ancient world was suffocated by superstitions.
Right, everything was an omen.
Your fate was entirely dictated by the alignment of the stars, the whims of a deity, or whether you crossed paths with a cursed object. So, for a religious text of that period to champion rationality over ritual, it's radically empowering.
It feels like an ancient version of Mythbusters.
That's a great way to put it.
The texts actively mock superstition. Take the Nakata Jataka. A town family arranges a marriage with a country girl. But on the day of the wedding, the town family's local ascetic looks at the sky and says, "The stars are unfavorable today. You absolutely cannot travel."
So they just stay home.
Yeah, they stay home and miss their own wedding. The bride's family is furious, assumes they were insulted, and marries the girl off to someone else.
Yeah, true.
When the town family shows up the next day demanding the bride, The country folks just laugh at them. They basically say, what can mere stars achieve? The luck is getting the girl.
It completely champions human agency. The text is telling the listener that sitting around waiting for the universe to give you a green light is a fantastic way to lose out on your life.
The Magala Janaka pushes it even further. A wealthy Brahmin discovers his incredibly expensive suit of clothes has been gnawed by mice.
And in his worldview, this is a terrible omen.
A complete disaster. The clothes are now cursed and will bring ruin to his entire house. He is so terrified he won't even touch them. He orders his son to carry them out on a stick and throw them in a graveyard.
Enter the Buddha.
Right, the Buddha, who was living as an ascetic at the time, happens to be walking by and gladly claims the clothes. The Brahmin rushes out, terrified that the ascetic will be cursed, but the Buddha essentially tells him that omens have zero power over the wise. Good enough for us are the rags from a graveyard.
This raises an important question, though, about empowerment. That narrative strips the power away from the object and places it firmly back into the mind of the individual.
It's all about internal control.
You also see this applied to the highest levels of government in the Mahasapina Jataka. A king is kept awake by 16 bizarre, terrifying dreams. His corrupt Brahmins see an opportunity and immediately try to convince him to fund massive, expensive animal sacrifices to ward off the evil portents.
Just preying on his anxiety to lie in their own pockets.
Precisely. It is only when the Bodhisattva intervenes that the panic stops. He calmly breaks down the dreams, explaining that they aren't supernatural warnings at all.
They're just stress dreams.
Exactly. They are merely reflections of the king's own subconscious anxieties and the shifting societal dynamics of his kingdom. By applying rational analysis to a psychological phenomenon, the Bodhisattva stops a massive slaughter of animals and saves the royal treasury.
So what does this all mean? We have rationality over superstition, self-reliance over fate. This radical pragmatism naturally spills over into how these texts view society and human interaction.
It does, yes.
There's a lot of material on social cohesion in the sources, but we have to be honest, some of the social messages are deeply conflicting and quite jarring to read today.
The dichotomy in how social dynamics are presented is stark, and it requires careful historical framing to understand what the authors were actually trying to achieve.
Let's look at the community building aspect first. In the Rukkhadhamma Jataka, the central lesson is that a forest of trees survives a massive tempest because their roots are all intertwined beneath the soil, supporting one another.
That's a beautiful image.
While a solitary tree, no matter how massive or ancient, gets easily blown over by the wind. Gorgeous metaphor for mutual support. Then you have the Tatira Jataka, where a partridge, a monkey, and an elephant learn to share a habitat peacefully.
By establishing an order.
Right, they don't fight for dominance based on size. They establish a social order based on honoring the eldest among them, valuing experience over brute strength.
It is a highly sophisticated endorsement of community resilience and structural harmony.
It is, but then you turn the page and the tone violently shifts. The sources contain a highly critical, incredibly harsh view of worldly attachments, specifically weaponized against women.
Yes.
In the Asadamanta, Atrita, and Dharana Jatakas, the text explicitly describes women as unknowable, uncertain as the path of fishes in the water, and inherently treacherous.
It's very extreme language.
In one rather shocking story, a master tells his pupil there is no separate text for sorrow, because women simply are depravity incarnate. You go from intertwined roots surviving a storm to blatant, glaring misogyny. How does a listener even process these two wildly different worldviews existing in the same stack of parables?
It's difficult. To process it, we must step back and look at the functional utility of these texts for their original audience. We aren't taking sides or endorsing the views, obviously, but we need to understand the mechanism behind them. These specific stories were not meant for the general public. They were targeted monastic tools.
So this is like internal HR material for ancient monasteries.
Essentially, yes. The primary audience for these specific harsh narratives were passion-tossed monks. These were men who had taken strict vows of celibacy and poverty, but they were wavering.
They wanted to leave.
Right. They were struggling with the very natural desire to leave the harsh discipline of the monastery, find a partner, and return to a comfortable family life.
They were looking at the net, just like the amorous fish, and contemplating swimming right into it.
And the monastery needed a way to shock them out of that desire. In these instances, the texts frame women not as individual humans, but as the ultimate literal symbol of worldly attachment and physical desire.
So it's a rhetorical strategy.
Exactly. To keep celibate monks in line, the narratives utilized extreme rhetoric to paint the physical world and interpersonal relationships as a dangerous, inescapable trap. The misogyny was a rhetorical device used to make the outside world appear repulsive, forcing the monk to turn his focus back inward to his spiritual battle.
That context doesn't make the text any less harsh, but it does explain the whiplash. It reveals that the overarching goal for these monks was total, uncompromising detachment from the physical world.
Yes, the community they built was meant to support an internal isolation.
And that brings us to the ultimate lesson of our sources today. The realization that the true battlefront is never out there in the world. It is always inside your own head.
Because the physical objects we desire or the people we attach ourselves to are secondary. The real conflict is the strength of the mind's grip on those things.
Which perfectly sets up my absolute favorite story in this entire collection, the Kudala Jataka, also known as the Spade Sage.
Oh, this one is a masterclass in behavioral psychology.
It really is. The premise is simple. You have a poor gardener who owns absolutely nothing except for a single, blunt, worn-out spade that he uses to scratch a living out of the dirt.
His one possession.
One day, he decides he wants to achieve enlightenment. He becomes a hermit, hides his trusty spade, and heads deep into the forest to meditate. But he can't stop thinking about the spade.
It is his sole material possession, the anchor to his former identity.
He obsesses over it.
Yeah.
So he abandons his holy vows, walks all the way back, and digs up the spade, but then he feels guilty, hides it again, and goes back to the forest.
And he does this multiple times, right?
He does this 6 times. 6 separate times. He is dragged back to his old, exhausting life just because he misses this worthless, blunt piece of metal. The shame he must have felt is palpable.
Absolutely.
Finally, on the 7th time, he realizes that as long as he knows where the spade is, his willpower will eventually fail.
He recognizes the absolute limit of his own internal discipline.
Exactly. He doesn't try to just meditate harder while the spade is buried nearby. He takes the spade to the edge of a great rushing river. He knows if he throws it normally, his eyes will track where it sinks and he'll be diving for it tomorrow.
So he takes drastic measures.
He shuts his eyes tight, whirls the spade around his head, and hurls it blindly into the middle of the torrent. He opens his eyes, realizes it is gone forever, and shouts with the roar of a lion, "I have conquered! I have conquered!"
I love that visual.
A king riding by after winning a massive military victory hears him. The king asks, "Whom have you conquered?" And the sage tells him that winning 1,000 battlefield victories is trivial compared to conquering the greed within yourself.
The psychology at play here is structural. The sage realized that the objective value of the item didn't matter. A blunt spade has zero monetary value, but the strength of his attachment to it was strong enough to ruin his life. Furthermore, he realized that willpower is a depleting resource. Instead of fighting a constant internal battle, he altered his physical environment to make the bad habit impossible. He removed the temptation entirely.
I love it because that blunt spade is so universally relatable today. It's like, knowing you need a full night's sleep, but you cannot stop yourself from doom scrolling on your phone at 2 a.m.
We've all been there.
The phone in that moment is a worthless distraction, but the gravitational pull it has on our attention is immense.
And the ancient solution isn't to just try harder to ignore the phone. The solution is to throw it in the river.
Or maybe just leave it in another room.
Right. In modern terms, leave it where you physically cannot reach it from your bed. Master your environment to master your mind.
So let's unpack the journey we've taken through these sources. We started with the drummer boy and the amorous fish, seeing the immediate dangers of overplaying your hand and ignoring the very real threats right in front of you.
We explored the sledgehammer approach, too.
Right, learning that even the purest intentions can cause massacres if we lack the practical wisdom to understand human nature.
We saw the ancient thinkers actively dismantling superstitions, demanding that individuals take rational responsibility for their own lives rather than blaming the stars.
We navigated the harsh, extreme rhetoric used by monasteries to force detachment, and finally we watched the Spade Sage achieve true victory by recognizing his own limits and letting go of his final anchor.
The wisdom of these texts isn't about worshiping the past or pretending the ancients were perfect. It's about recognizing that the underlying software of the human mind really hasn't changed in 2.5 millennia.
The psychological traps are exactly the same. We all have our inner tempests. We all have our moments of stubborn ego where we want to use an axe to solve a mosquito-sized problem.
And we certainly all have our own versions of the blunt spade that keep pulling us back from the lives we actually want to lead. The mechanics of human attachment are timeless.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to carry with you today. The texts argue for complete detachment, for finding your blunt spade and hurling it into the rushing river to achieve ultimate peace.
That's the ancient prescription.
But let's bring that into our modern reality. Is a life entirely devoid of attachments? A life completely without any blunt spades holding us to the ground actually a life worth living? Or is the vulnerability of being deeply attached to people, places, and even silly objects simply the necessary price we pay for experiencing love and connection? Think about it.